windswept market town, where dust sketched halos around the afternoon sun, there lived a woman named Mariam, who ran a modest tea stall beside the old banyan tree. Her stall was famous for cardamom steam and sweet bread, and for a chalkboard sign that read, "Exact change only." The words told a story. Mariam believed the world worked best when everything balanced. No surprises, no debts, no loose ends. Order was her armour. She wasn't unkind, just careful. Careful with coins, careful with time. Careful with the heart that had once been cracked by a marriage that ended with a slammed door and a silence that rang for years. Careful had kept her standing. Careful had also kept her alone. One evening a storm marched in from the plains, drumming on metal roofs like 1,000 urgent fists. As Mariam latched her shutters, she noticed a bundle on the stall step, a sleeping infant wrapped in a thin violet shawl, a paper tag pinned to the cloth with a single word, Amina. The baby's breath fogged the air in tiny clouds. There was no one else on the street, only the banyan leaves flapping like startled birds. Mariam's first instinct was to count. Money in the tin, logs for the stove, jars of tea. Babies were not on any ledger. Someone will come back, she told herself. No one did. She walked the baby to the police post. It was closed. The clinic's lights were off. The storm kept singing. She returned to the stall and warmed milk with clumsy hands. The child sipped, sighed, and slept. In the morning, the old cobbler from across the lane, Baba Yunus, who repaired souls and souls with equal patience, squinted over his spectacles. "You will keep her?" he asked softly. "Keep," Mariam said. "I don't even know how to hold her." Look, her arms were stiff as planks. "Hold with your heart," he said. "Hands will learn later." The town murmured, as towns do. "A divorced woman with a baby," they whispered. "What will the book say?" Mariam tightened the chalk letters on her sign. Exact change only. But that night the storm returned with a second bundle, this one swaddled in yellow, tagged Layla. Then a week later, Noor in a green scarf. A month after, Zoya in sky blue. The fifth came on a cloudless afternoon, as if to prove storms are not the only deliverers. Hana, wrapped in white. 5 girls. 5 names the town would not forget. 5 imbalances in Mariam's tidy sums. She looked at the chalkboard. Then she wiped the words away. Raising 5 daughters is a symphony, played with mismatched instruments. Some days the music is breathtaking. Other days the cymbals fight the flute. Mariam stumbled at first. She tried to measure out love like flour, keeping scoops even so no one would feel less. She rotated sweets on a schedule, timed stories by an egg clock, awarded chores with star charts. But hearts don't keep time with timers. Her flaw, her worship of balance, turned into a cage. "When you laugh," she told them once, exhausted after a day of spilled milk and homework tears, "please laugh in turns." The girls blinked and then erupted together in the biggest, wildest laughter of all. Something cracked inside Mariam, the brittle shell of control. She sat down among crayons, shoes, crumbs, and finally laughed with them. After that, she tried to lead less and listen more. Each girl began to bloom in her own weather. Amina, the first, liked to take radios apart and return them singing. She built a windmill from fan blades and bicycle parts that spun stubbornly even when the breeze pretended not to care. Layla memorized the names of laws and asked why some doors had locks on both sides. Noor kept a box of chalk in her pocket and taught numbers to children who could not afford school books, drawing sums on the pavement. Zoya braided healing songs into the clinic's crowded mornings. When the doctor left for a wedding, she stitched a cut with calm hands no one knew she had. Hannah painted the town, not its walls, but its memory. The banyan at dawn, a kite tangled in telephone lines, Baba Yunus's hands balancing a shoe on his knee like a prayer. The town, which had once whispered, 5, she'll be ruined, began to buy their tea and linger in the laughter. People called the girls Mariam's 5 fingers, useful for grasping the future. Yet the antagonist, as in all good tales, stalked the edges of their days. It wore many faces, a developer with slick hair named Mr. Cattry, who wanted to buy the market and replace it with a glass box, a banker who smiled too tight, a gossip who counted other people's coins, and most dangerous, a voice that curled into Mariam's ear at night. Greed, personified not as hunger for gold, but as hunger for certainty. If you sell, it hissed, you will be safe. You will have a cushion for their weddings, their schooling, your old age. When the Market Council announced that leases would be reviewed, Cattry arrived with a silver pen and a contract whose lines danced like snakes. I'll pay you 3 times the stall's value, he purred, and build a supermarket with aisles wide enough for your girls to grow into. You can run the tea counter inside. No more rain on your stove, no more dust on your bread. It sounded like progress, it sounded like control. Mariam's floor tugged at her. She could finally balance every ledger. She signed. That night, Baba Yunus walked over with his lantern. You have made your choice, he said. Now you must face the 3 tests. Tests? Mariam frowned. I'm not a child. All souls are children before a choice, he said, smiling. Every folk path has tests. Don't worry. Your daughters will take them with you. The first test, the test of listening. When bulldozers arrived, the girls heard the market groan, nor pressed her ear to the banyan's bark. It says this place remembers the footsteps that fed it, she whispered. It begs not to be erased, but renewed. So they listened, to vendors, to old women who carried coins knotted in their dupattas, to children whose sandals learned to run between these stalls. Layla brought a notebook and wrote not only what people said, but what their silence carried. The test taught them a folk truth. If you listen long enough, the walls speak. The second test, the test of naming. Amina spread the contract on the table and called things by their true names. This clause that looks like a favour, she said, tapping the page, is a trap. It lets them raise our rent beyond what T can pay. This relocation bonus is a ribbon tied around a stone. Layla took the papers to a lawyer known for defending farmers. The lawyer confirmed Amina's reading and gave a verdict. You can undo this, but it will cost tears. They named greed where it hid. They named fear where it slept. They named hope where it fluttered like a street sparrow. The third test, the test of giving away. Baba Yunus told them an old story of a traveller who came to a village where the well ran dry. Each home guarded its jar. The traveller placed his own cup at the square's centre and poured out his water first. Who will go thirsty with me? He asked. Soon others poured. The well filled again, because the village remembered how to make a line together to the river. Sometimes, Baba said, to save your house you must open your door. The girls looked at one another. The unthinkable idea arrived then, not yet fully formed, but shimmering like a kite tugging from far away. Before they could seize it, consequences arrived. Cattry's men fenced off the market and draped banners showing a glossy supermarket with sliding doors. They offered cash to move out within a week. The vendors scattered like beads from a cut string. Mariam sat on the stool of her empty stall, hands folded in her lap. I did this, she said. Zoya knelt and pressed her forehead to her mother's knee. We will do something else now. Noor rallied the displaced vendors to sell from carts along the river, while the legal fight simmered. Hana painted signs for each cart, bold letters that sang spices, soap, rice, repairs, books, and a larger banner that read, We belong together. Amina engineered a canopy from tarps and bamboo. When the wind tried to scatter it, she taught it a new respect. Layla, with the farmer's lawyer, filed an injunction, arguing that the council had violated the community's right to public memory and economic continuity. People scoffed at the phrase public memory, but as Noor taught in her street school, memories have rights too. The court took weeks. Khatri grew impatient. He visited Mariam with a bouquet of lilies wrapped in cellophane. "You are a reasonable woman," he said. "Call off your girls. Take the money and I'll name a coffee corner after you. Mariam's chai in bright letters." She stared at the lilies and saw the glass box reflected in their cellophane. She remembered the tests. "The girls won't be called off," she said quietly. "They are not dogs." Khatri's smile thinned. "You will regret this. When greed threatens, it always brings thunder. Kurt notices rude men in yellow hats, a bulldozer that idled like a growling animal." The town felt small, and the girls' plans felt like hand fans against a furnace. Then one dawn the court ruled, a temporary stay. The market could not be demolished until the case was heard fully, and the council had to meet with the vendors to propose a community-led restoration plan. It was not victory. It was a chance to fight in the open. The girls stepped into that chance. They organised a festival of repair, a weekend when people brought what was broken, stools with one leg, radios with no song, marriages with too much silence. Baba Yunus mended shoes in the square. Amina ran a fix-it tent with donated tools. Noor ran a learn-to-read corner under the banyan. Zoya checked blood pressures and stitched scrapes. Hana held a paint-your-door workshop that left alleys blooming. Layla set up a booth where people could sign a petition. "We, the undersigned, are the market's memory." The town's mayor wandered in, grinning sheepishly as Hana smeared him with a rogue streak of blue. "This is good," he admitted. "Different." "Different is what the future looks like before it learns its own face," Noor replied. Khatri attended too, disguised in sunglasses no one needed. He saw his glass box dream dim, a little, in the light of so many small salvations. He made a phone call that evening which would later matter. When the council finally met, Mariam, who once hid behind her chalkboard, stood with her daughters. "I signed a contract because I feared our future," she said, voice steady. "I thought money could guarantee safety. But safety without belonging is just a prettier name for loneliness." The council listened, the banyan listened, even greed paused to hear its own footsteps. It wasn't enough. Not yet. The next week, a rumour spread that the bank had turned cold and Khatri's investors were pulling out. He had mortgaged more than he could carry. Someone had told him the town would bend, but it had bent into an embrace with itself. And embraces are strange to those who hold only pens. Khatri's office lights stayed off for 3 nights. On the 4th, a guard found him sleeping at his desk, a man who suddenly possessed nothing that could not be folded into a briefcase. The market, which he sought to erase, now looked like a place where he could buy a cup of tea he could no longer afford. The girls, the 5 fingers, brought their palms together. "Ami," Layla said that evening, "we have been listening, naming and giving away. There is one more step we must take." "Tell me," Mariam said, though she already felt the shape of the unthinkable. "We will give away what we built for ourselves," Amina said. "We will not just save the market. We will turn our home above the stall into a house of daughters, a permanent refuge for abandoned girls. We'll register it as a trust, let the community own it. Our names will be caretakers, not owners." Mariam's breath caught. "We have little," she said, "a roof that leaks in the monsoon, a kitchen that sings off-key, my bed that creaks whenever I remember to dream." "We have enough to begin," Noor said. "And enough friends to continue," Hannah added, thinking of the mayor's paint-streaked face and the petitions stacked in Layla's satchel. Zoya took Mariam's hands. "This is the unthinkable thing we will do. We will give away our home, so that those the world drops on doorsteps will find a door already open." Mariam saw the chalkboard she had once wiped clean and felt the last brittle piece of herself dissolve. "Yes," she said. "Let us be the door." They worked through the night with Baba Yunus, the farmer's lawyer, and an accountant who did not blink at small balances, but smiled at large intentions. They wrote a charter that began, "We remember being found." We make a place for finding the trust's name, the Banyan House, its promise, no girl abandoned in the town would ever be received by a locked door. News travelled faster than the river's gossip. People brought blankets, spoons, paint. The clinic donated a metal bed. A seamstress offered to sew curtains in the colours of childhood. Green for grass, yellow for mangoes, blue for the kite sky. Children dropped coins into a jar labelled future snacks. The mayor, blue streak faded, lobbied for a small municipal grant. It wasn't much. It was enough. The council, cornered by the trust's popularity and the court's caution, pivoted. They announced a community market renewal plan. Stalls repaired, rents frozen for 5 years, a cooperative formed to manage maintenance. The supermarket dream dissolved into something that smelled less like varnish and more like cardamom. In Kutri, Karma arrived not with a drum, but with a quiet knock. The investor who had once egged on his appetite sued him for losses. The bank called in its loans. He lost his office, his car, his assurances. Pride, personified at last, slumped in the mirror behind his eyes. On the first day the Banyan House opened, he appeared at the door holding a paper bag of oranges, as if they could buy him a second pass. The girls recognised the sunglasses he no longer wore. "I came to donate," he said, voice husked with someone else's rain. Layla studied his empty hands. "Oranges are generous," she said, "but there is a form of giving even they can't manage." He lowered his gaze. "I need work." It would have pleased a cheaper tale to slam the door. Greed expects either applause or punishment, but the tests had taught the girls something else. Nor stepped aside. "Come wash pots," she said. "We pay in humility first, then tea." He washed. He burned his palm once and did not curse. Zoya wrapped his hand with the gentle sharpness of a lesson you were ready to learn. Hannah sketched him bent over the sink, a portrait titled Learning. Weeks flowed. Khatri became Mr. Khatri again. Less villain, more man. He delivered water jugs to the market, swept the Banyan House yard, wrote an apology, letter that he read aloud to the vendors' cooperative. It did not erase history, nothing does, but it inscribed a different future atop it. One evening, when the sun slipped a gold coin into the river, Mariam stood at her old stall and brewed tea for a line that never seemed to end. The market hummed, a hive whose honey was belonging. A girl arrived at the Banyan House door, carried by a cousin who didn't know what else to do. She wore a shawl the colour of hibiscus and a name pinned to the corner, Safia. The house did not ask for exact change. It asked only for readiness. Mariam lifted Safia and whispered the words that had once saved her from her own hardness. "Hold with your heart. Hands will learn later." Years passed the way wind passes through broad leaves, loud in the moment, remembered afterward as gentleness. Amina's windmill grew into a row of community turbines. Layla became an advocate who turned petitions into policies. Noor's school acquired benches, then books, then a building with windows that learned to look forward. Zoya became the clinic's backbone. Hannah painted murals across walls, once painted with advertisements for miracles that never arrived. Her miracles did. The Banyan House expanded, 1 room at a time, then 2. Girls arrived in every colour of cloth, every note of cry. They learned to pour tea, to fix a leaky tap, to read the map of their own stubbornness and steer it toward compassion. When they asked why the house existed, the story always began with storms and bundles and a chalkboard scrubbed clean. 20 years from the day Amina was laid on the tea stall step, the festival bells rang again, this time for a celebration the town had never seen. a new building stood beside the banyan, a small, dignified structure with arches like cupped hands. On its lintel, carved in simple letters, the Banyan House, a home for the unwanted, kept by the loved. The unthinkable had not only been thought, it had been built. Reporters came from the city with microphones and the hunger for a headline that glowed. "What is the secret?" one asked Mariam, thrusting a voice at her mouth. "No secret," Mariam said, looking at her daughters and the daughters of those daughters. "Just a habit of opening what fear closes." Mr. Khatri, grey at the temples, stood in the back, hat in his hands. He had become the trust's groundskeeper and the market's punctual water deliverer, known for finding lost things and returning them without ceremony. He wiped his eyes and turned away so no one would think he was leaking. Baba Yunus, now bent like a question mark that had found its answer, shuffled forward with a gift wrapped in old newspaper. Inside lay the chalkboard from the tea stall. He had rescued it the night the sign was wiped. "It should hang here," he said. Hannah mounted it by the door. Nor wrote in looping letters, "No exact change required." Underneath, in smaller print, "Bring your whole heart, we'll make the rest add up." At dusk, children swirled like sparrows around the banyan. The market thrummed, the turbines on the hill turned, a kettle sang, and Mariam, once careful with coins, now careful with wonder, felt her life balance at last, not because the columns matched, but because the ledger had been replaced with a story, and the story kept growing. Karma had made its rounds, the selfish act punished with a long apprenticeship in humility, the kindness rewarded not with riches, but with a town that knew whose hands had built its belonging. The reversal was complete, and yet it felt like a beginning. That night, when the lanterns were doused and the Banyan House settled into its breathing sleep, Mariam stood at the doorway and asked the hook's question again, not to the dark, but to her memory. If the world drops a life at your doorstep, is it your burden or your chance? The house answered with the soft sighs of rooms that had learned to hold more than their square footage could count. The banyan nodded in the wind. Somewhere, a girl dreaming of her future rolled over and clutched her pillow the way a swimmer trusts water. Mariam smiled. "Chance," she whispered, and closed the door that would, by dawn, open again. Greed promises safety and delivers loneliness. Generosity risks uncertainty and builds a home. Look around. There is a doorstep in your life that's waiting for courage. Open one door this week, to a neighbour, a cause, a stranger, a child. Offer what you have, time, skill, tea. Let your hands learn what your heart already knows.